And so if he gets up there and he gives a big presidential speech where he makes an argument, that seals it.
They've set the bar quite low for him.
Let's do a little role reversal here. You're a consultant. You're walking in on Biden's speechwriters right now. They've been pulling all-nighters. You can tell them one thing. What would that one thing be?
I mean, I would definitely tell them to keep it 30 minutes, which sounds like a long time, but no convention speech has ever been 30 minutes.
Well, you know what?
This would
There's never been one during a pandemic. Let's tighten that up.
Look, I would do 20. I would want 20, but I'm trying to be realistic. Yeah, 20 is ideal. 30, I think, is the max. Neither will be achieved. Obama's was like an hour, I think. People only remember speeches for one thing or two things at most.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And I do think, if, maybe the theme they're going to settle on is Biden's theme of, restoring the soul of America. Fine. If that's your theme, stick to that theme, make it a speech about that theme, and make it a story about that. And don't worry about trying to get every single thing in the speech that everyone's telling you that you need to get in there. The clip we're going to watch is from Joe Biden's 2016 Democratic National Convention speech.
This is kind of a bittersweet moment for Jill and me and our family. In 2008, when he was about to deploy to Iraq, and again in 2012, our son Beau introduced me to the country and placed my name in nomination. You got a glimpse. I know I sound like a dad, but you got a glimpse what an incredibly fine young man Beau was. Thank you. But as Ernest Hemingway once wrote, the world breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are strong at the broken places. I've been made strong at the broken places by my love, Jill, by my heart, my son, Hunter, and the love of my life, my Ashley, and by all of you. And I mean this sincerely. Those who've been through this, you know I mean what I say. By all of you, your love, your prayers, your support. But you know what we talk about? We think about the countless thousands of other people who suffered so much more than we have, with so much less support, so much less reason to go on. But they get up every morning, every day. They put one foot in front of the other. They keep going. That's the unbreakable spirit of the people of America. That's who we are.
So I feel obviously there's the first part, and we've talked about this many times, the kind of animating grief that Joe Biden has experienced in his way of connecting with the troubles that people feel. And it reminds me a little bit of, Barack Obama runs as this change agent in 2008. But then the financial crisis comes, and actually the quality that helps him prove he should be president is the kind of stability, the seriousness, the responsibility that he demonstrated as a candidate, which wasn't central to his appeal, especially not against someone like Hillary Clinton, who certainly has those qualities. Now, Joe Biden runs as a continuity candidate, basically saying, at first, the Republicans are going to wake up. We need to restore the soul of our country. We need to kind of get back to how things were in some deep sense. But at a moment of profound national crisis and emergency, he's now actually going to, I think, succeed in part because he has this life experience. It was always there, but especially now that, a country that's grieving, a country that feels scared, a country that feels on its heels, the losses that Biden has had in his life, the terrible losses, and how clearly that motivates his politics, I think is similarly playing a role.
The country is both grieving and divided, and I think Joe Biden can present himself as someone who can console and can heal, and the country is struggling badly. And working people are struggling badly, and people who've lost their jobs are struggling badly, and he can also sort of present that economic argument very effectively. To me, those are like the two big things he has to do in the convention speech.
There's an irony to the critique, much of it legitimate, that Biden is a consensus Democrat who was too far to the right on a lot of issues for a long time. Is like that idea of Joe Biden, the safe moderate, is so pervasive. I mean, it's partly why Barack Obama chose him, right? He was safe. He was a way to say, yeah, I'm this new black candidate, but look, there's Joe Biden standing by my side, a pillar of boring.
And now he's going to do the opposite for his VP pick, which is even crazier.
Which is funny. But what's interesting to me is he has a little bit of leeway to propose, I think, further left policies than he otherwise would have. Now, the usual critique is when a candidate like, Elizabeth Warren or a candidate like Bernie Sanders sort of moves a little bit towards the middle on something, they get away with it. They get credit because they have their left credentials. But we kind of see the opposite thing playing out with Biden, whose sort of like backbone consensus Democrat view gives him the ability to kind of shift left on a few things.
And I would bet that in his convention speech this time around, the policies that he has laid out will be more progressive than the rhetoric in the speech about the policies.
Yes, I think that's right.
He will go very broad and almost cliche, I bet, on what he's going to do around climate and the economy and everything else. Or at least, I shouldn't say cliche, but it will be, the language will be couched in values more than it will be. And now I'm proposing the most progressive climate policy in history. Like, I don't think he'll say that. Because they want that identity as the safe moderate white guy for the election, even as they're doing tremendous work on the policy front to try to push through really progressive policies when if he's president.
To state the obvious, and I'm not trying to be a wise guy here, I really mean it. That's not Donald Trump's story. Just listen to me a second without booing or cheering. I mean this sincerely. We should really think about this. His cynicism is unbounded. His lack of empathy and compassion can be summed up in a phrase I suspect he's most proud of having made famous: "You're fired." I mean, really, I'm not joking. Think about that. Think about that. Think about everything you learned as a child, no matter where you were raised. How can there be pleasure in saying you're fired? He's trying to tell us he cares about the middle class. Give me a break. That's a bunch of malarkey.
My first reaction was, I mean, he said this, he gave this speech in 2016. He could say all of that now at his convention speech in Milwaukee, and it would be a very good, compelling message. Biden in those clips basically sort of speaks on behalf of people who are struggling against a guy who got pleasure out of firing people, which is sort of the message that a lot of people said should have been, the Democrat central message in 2016.
I get trying to appeal to people around "you're fired," but what I also think when I see "you're fired" is this was a serious businessman who oversaw a large empire, and basically the reason "you're fired" was part of his brand is because he sat in the boardroom and he was a big time leader and he was a big business guy and he fired people left and right. And people may not like the idea of being fired, but that idea, that sort of unshakable idea that Donald Trump was a serious, real, successful business person has never to this day been shaken. It is still a consensus view.
Well, you're right. And I think that at the time, it might have not been as effective as it would be now, even because at the time, he was a businessman who, fooled people into thinking he built this great empire from scratch and is some kind of successful guy in the economy. Now, after 4 years as president with double-digit unemployment, I actually think that hitting him as ineffective as some kind of successful businessman who tried his hand at governing the country the same way I think it's going to be much more powerful from Biden.
What I would be thinking about, and I don't have the answer, and I wouldn't presume to guess, is that I would be thinking about, how do I tell a story that's basically like, if you come along with me, like, America will be okay. And I'll just make sure everything's okay. Like, right now, things are not okay. And like, you are sad and you are scared and this president is in chaos and we're in a pandemic and we're in a financial crisis. And if you just come along with me, I will bring back the kind of basics of governing, the basic humility, the basic version of a president you were looking for. How do you have that part of the conversation while also sending a message to the progressive base of the Democratic Party that I also hear you, that the way that normal before wasn't good enough, that we need something new and something more. And like, I think that has always been the challenge for Biden. It will be the challenge of that speech, right? Like, America's going to be okay, but we're also not going back to how things were before. And how do you sort of tell that story where it's not competing, I think is a challenge.
You're talking about how he should speak to sort of the middle of the country, also progressives, but you weren't talking much about what he should say about Donald Trump. I think that's smart because I do think that the country has basically made the decision to fire Donald Trump. They have not yet made the decision to hire Joe Biden. They're close. Right. They may be close. But the fall will be Donald Trump saying, you might not like me, but stick with me because this guy's awful. And I think Joe Biden in this convention speech needs to, in all the ways that you talked about, show that he's the right guy for the job. And I don't think he has to worry that much about, like, you know, how many sick burns about Donald Trump that he can get in that speech. He just doesn't need him.
We are all aware of Donald Trump's foibles. We are not, we've been in this fight for a long time. The other thing I'd say too is they've done a magnificent job on the Trump side of setting Joe Biden up for success, because basically the Trump message is Joe Biden's fine, he's senile, and his White House will be run by the left. Basically, Joe Biden will be carried along by AOC and Warren and Ilhan Omar to do their bidding because he's not cogent. And so if he gets up there and gives a big presidential speech where he makes an argument, you know, that seals it. You know, that eviscerates that.
They've set the bar quite low for him. Is the other thing they've done.